As the evening shadows stretched across Fulton County, the ripple effects of the raid continued to deepen, transforming the ordinary offices where local officials worked into arenas of uncertainty and introspection, where every desk, file, and computer terminal became a symbol of potential exposure, and the walls themselves seemed to hum with the weight of scrutiny, as though they absorbed the tension and reflected it back at everyone inside, amplifying every whispered concern, every nervous glance, and every careful decision, making the ordinary act of processing voter information feel like a performance under the gaze of both law enforcement and an unseen national audience. And for many officials, this was the first time they truly felt the psychological pressure of being simultaneously responsible for democracy and vulnerable to public interpretation, their instinctual reactions merging with procedural obligations, forcing them to navigate a complex web of legality, perception, and human emotion in real time. Throughout the day, officials reported a pervasive fear that the raid might be used as a pretext to justify broader political narratives, a strategic framing that could shift public perception regardless of actual legal findings, and this awareness infiltrated every decision, from how documents were handled to how internal communications were phrased, creating an environment where even routine administrative choices carried layers of symbolic meaning, and the mental toll of constantly calculating potential misinterpretations added a heavy burden, forcing individuals to balance transparency, compliance, and self-protection while remaining effective in their responsibilities, all under the intense glare of media attention and the possibility of partisan scrutiny that seemed ever-present. Journalists on the scene captured the subtle but telling signs of human instinct under pressure, describing how officials adjusted their movements, minimized verbal communication, and created micro-strategies to maintain both efficiency and composure, noting the choreography of a team suddenly aware that their every act could be amplified or misrepresented, and how these subtle behaviors, often imperceptible in ordinary circumstances, became critical to maintaining professional credibility while managing an internal emotional landscape dominated by fear, anticipation, and uncertainty, highlighting the invisible tension that accompanies public service in highly politicized and scrutinized environments. Analytical observers noted that the raid exemplified the complex interplay between legality, perception, and narrative control, demonstrating that even strictly procedural actions could be reframed as politically significant depending on how they were presented, interpreted, and amplified, and that the human dimension, fear, anticipation, loyalty, and instinct, could be as influential in shaping outcomes as the documents or materials under review, creating a multi-layered environment in which actions are constantly measured not just by compliance with law, but by anticipated reactions from multiple stakeholders, ranging from federal authorities to local colleagues, the media, political operatives, and the public at large. Officials themselves reflected on the extraordinary nature of their situation, acknowledging that the usual stability and predictability of election administration had been replaced by a dynamic landscape where history, politics, and media converge, and that even the most mundane procedural acts, checking ballots, verifying data, ensuring chain of custody compliance, were now loaded with significance, as if each keystroke, file scanned, or signature verified carried potential consequences far beyond their immediate function, reminding them that in moments of national attention, the ordinary mechanics of democracy can become theater, and the personal and professional stakes can escalate exponentially in ways no one could have anticipated. Outside the community, the media and political commentators dissected every available detail, creating a multi-layered feedback loop in which perception influenced interpretation and interpretation influenced behavior, feeding back into the office environment and further heightening the sense of urgency, responsibility, and vigilance, and demonstrating how external narratives can infiltrate operational spaces, subtly reshaping decision-making and stress levels as officials navigated the tension between maintaining professionalism, defending procedural integrity, and mitigating the psychological impact of becoming central figures in a story being observed, discussed, and debated across the nation, with every nuance subject to amplification. By the end of the day, the raid had revealed more than procedural compliance or potential investigative targets. It had exposed the emotional, strategic, and structural pressures faced by those at the heart of election administration, highlighting the extraordinary responsibility carried by individuals whose work is usually invisible yet fundamental to democracy, emphasizing how the intersection of legality, narrative, and human behavior creates moments of intense psychological and institutional significance and leaving officials, journalists, and analysts alike with the sobering understanding that what began as a single event in Fulton County had become a lens through which the challenges of trust, accountability, and perception in modern governance were brought into sharp, unflinching focus. A story whose reverberations would continue to shape both policy and public consciousness long after the final files were reviewed.